Hello, today I want to share a very great book that I just, I finished about a year ago, I think, but it still affects me in a positive way. And it's a book called Quiet. It's by Cain, who is herself an introvert. The book is about introversion and introverts. I'm certainly an introvert, even though you see me a lot on video. I'm probably more accurately termed an ambivert, which is really, somewhere on the spectrum between a really introverted person and an extroverted person. And most of us are ambiverts. According to the book, I think roughly about a third of people that you meet are going to be introverts. But the thing I really like about the book, I'm going to share what I really like about the book. Of course, I can't expound on everything in the book, nor probably do it justice in a review. I call it a review, but it's really a discussion, one-on-one, a personal discussion, you could say. The thing I really like about the book, a couple of things. One main point is that it's really cool to be an introvert. It's not just cool, but it's effective to be an introvert. And I've seen this over the years too in my trainings of other people and watching other trainers. The thing I've seen is the most effective trainers and salespeople I've met are truthfully actually more introverted than they are extroverted. Even in my case, even though I get up on stage and I talk quite a lot I speak at least 2 or 3 times a month. Sometimes in front of large audiences, as many as a couple of thousand, down to a few. Sometimes it's nervous. Nowadays it's not that nerve-wracking to do it. So I'm probably an ambivert, like I said, but even for me, I've seen that there are certain advantages that I have as an introvert, and Susan talks about this in the book. It's a great book again, where introverts have a distinct advantage. And if I'm paraphrasing, please forgive me, but I would say it's our ability to prepare and to listen. Introverts take more time to prepare for a conversation, prepare for a sales presentation. They're a little bit more detail-oriented, they tend to be. We listen more keenly. We're not participate. We don't like to participate necessarily in social situations. And explain a little bit why and how later in this conversation. But in this conversation with you, they are good observers. They like to observe, and observation takes a different part of your brain functions than does participating. And so extroverts tend to participate more in social avenues, but introverts tend to observe more, and we tend to have more insights, I would assert, more insight and more understanding of how social exchanges occur and why they occur. And that understanding, if used even in a quiet way, even in front of a room full of people, can be decidedly very, very effective, if not very disarming. You've probably seen it before. It's the quiet person who speaks up last, who says the most insightful thing that leads to a breakthrough in the conversation. I hear it time and time again. You're the type of person I would want on the board because you would speak last, but what you say always makes the most sense. And it incorporates everything that everybody else has said so far. It's the listening skills that really are our advantage as an introvert. Couple of main points here, and I would say the book is it's really insightful, and it gives you some clear practices to start with. Frankly, I don't know if all the practices are really that effective, to be honest, but I would say 90% of them are probably good and worth trying. Different strokes for different people. You have to try it and see what works. Okay. But having said that, it's an extraordinary book. If you're an introvert, even if you're an extrovert, you should be reading this book. Highly recommend it. It's very well written. It's very, it comes from a personal experience as well, so it makes for a very good read. It's a couple of 100 pages in length. But here are the main points that I got. Okay, the first main insight that I saw was in her research. She found that perhaps the category of introvert and extrovert may not be a very revealing category. perhaps a more revealing category, something they refer in the book as high reactives versus low reactives. So introverts tend to be high reactives and extroverts tend to be low reactives. What does that mean? It means that high reactives are more sensitive to stimuli. If we get too much stimuli, i.e. too many people around us, we get very nervous, very reactivated. We don't like those kinds of situations because it's too stimulating for the brain. Your brain is, your prefrontal cortex is overactivated. Some brain experts would call it. It's an overactivation, and you tend to get a headache, you're stressed out. Sometimes adrenaline kicks in. I know a personal relative of mine, her adrenaline goes to the roof whenever more than 5 people come into her house. And she literally freaks out. So we get to overactivation when you're an introvert. When you're an extrovert, you're not as affected by that. You can have 15,000 people and you're happier than heck. My father was an extrovert. He could visit, literally probably 100 people a day. I remember when I took him to a visit to India, he would just keep visiting. He loved this. He tried on people. And yeah, he needed his time to turn off and be quiet too. But for the most part, he was an extrovert. And you could tell very clearly, because some of my other relatives were certainly not extroverts. We were more introverts. So there's this concept of high reactive and low reactive. There's a test for high reactive. If you even mention the word lemon juice, you'd start salivating. I'm already salivating, just thinking of lemon juice. And excuse me, but I just had to swallow it. But it's a high reactives tend to be reactivated by lemon. If you show lemon juice to somebody or lemon, or you squeeze lemon on their tongue, they exude a lot more saliva. They think that that's related to being an introvert because you're very sensitive to stimuli. If you're less sensitive, then you're not so stimulated by it, and you can handle lots and lots of stimulation. You can be an extrovert all day and never run out of energy, right? But for an introvert, it can be very tiring. I know for myself, when I lead an all-day training, even if it's just one day, the next day I typically need a break. I do 2 to 3 day training sometimes, but I tend to ease the schedule out on the second and the third day, just because it just works better. And I have a natural discipline. I can overcome that easily if I need to. But for the most part, I know I need a break. I know after 3 days, I certainly need a couple of days of break after that because it's just too much stimulation. And I just can't handle that, psychologically. Okay. So that may be a good reason for why we are introverts and extroverts, and they think 50% of it could be from genetics and 50% could be from social conditioning. Which means they basically don't know. It could be either way. But I would bet it's probably 50-50, just based on the other readings that I've done. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, like I said, she has some practices in here that I'm not going to go through all of them. But the main practice I think would be for introverts is to recognize their strengths and to exploit their strengths. And not necessarily just fall into the trap where most universities and organizations will try to say, well, you got to speak your mind all the time. Well, I think that's absolute bukaka. I've always suspected it, I always knew it, and I know it's accurate now. So I can tell you as an introvert, or even extroverts out there, that as an introvert, you don't have to change your entire personality to become successful. And there are ways that you can show your success and demonstrate your effectiveness by being quiet, thinking, using the right opportunity to express yourself in a way that's clear and succinct. To know that, sometimes you just need to be a pretend extrovert, but there's plenty of time for reflection later. I do a lot of art myself. I like to draw and I like to paint, and I like, not paint, but use ink. I'm moving to acrylics very slowly but surely, and I like to do that. But I always know, whenever I do a speaking presentation, I know I'm always looking forward to that quiet time when I can just sit down with my white piece of paper and do my art. And that's always something you want to have in mind. So I hope you get the spirit of this book in my presentation here, which is to give, hope, and not just hope, but possibility to introverts and extroverts out there who are interacting with introverts. to understand how you can effectively work with introverts as well. And that being an introvert, I think the biggest message should be considered a strength rather than a weakness. It doesn't in any way invalidate extroverts. It actually complements extroverts in a very strong way. Some of my good friends are extroverts in some ways, and they love and they adore and they respect and highly regard the time that I have with them, because they know they're not going to get any BS from me in terms of listening to them in an honest and frank but very attentive manner. Very attentive manner that they probably can't get from their other extrovert friends. So I hope that again leaves you with some hope and possibility. And again, I highly recommend the book. It's called Quiet, and it's by Susan Cain. That's C-A-I-N. And I hope you buy the book. I highly recommend it, like I said, and I look forward to serving you in the future. Take care and have a great day.